Hello, everybody. Sun emoji. Welcome back to another episode of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the podcast where I usually say we speak to the players voted out of this All Stars season. But this time we are actually joined by a finalist. I'm Nico, your host for today. And if that little sun emoji nod wasn't enough of a teaser to spoil who it is, we are joined by this season's third place finisher, Stanley. How's it going, Stanley?
It's great. Good morning. Welcome to the least anticipated episode of the series.
Don't be so down on yourself. You kind of gave us a lot to work with this season, so we'll remember your presence for sure. And the whole sun emoji branding, that's just one little part of it. So I'm sure we'll have plenty chance to go over lots of things.
I've been doing that my entire org career. I'm sure you guys saw it in the Spec Lounge. It was a big thing in my very first org with EJ. I'm sorry, Jaden.
Right. Yeah.
He hated it, and I had no idea because nobody has ever really made that big a deal about it. I've just continued it. It's just always something that I do. I know people say, I don't say good morning, or I don't, they like to just continue the conversations. But the truth is that the conversation is not continued. The conversation ended, and now it's a new day.
There you go.
You know?
Well, speaking of Jaden and your original season, this was an All-Stars season, so you get to see some familiar faces again. So coming into it, obviously your season was back in season 19, so one of the earlier seasons amongst the ones selected to come back. What were your sort of pre-season expectations as far as who you thought you might see? Did you keep up with the following seasons much at all to know who other prospective players might be? What were your whole thoughts on, potential casting?
So I actually was originally supposed to be an alternate for Prison Break, season 18.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't end up getting on the cast for that because I didn't really understand what was happening with it. I just assumed I wasn't going to be on that season. So I fell into a spectator role, which I really enjoyed, and I'm really glad that I was able to spectate first and then play because I was brand new to orgs. I had never even heard of them until Pat had, messaged me on Reddit. And I know after my season, they did the fans versus favorites thing. So I know that a lot of people from my season and from season 18 were on season 20. So I knew that I probably wasn't going to see anybody that had already appeared on fans versus favorites. With Prison Break, the cast wasn't deep enough for me not to expect someone like Peter. I actually thought Courtney might make an appearance. I knew that if winners were coming back that Caleb would definitely be on the cast, and I was pretty sure that Andrew would be playing. I know at one point I saw that he was no longer with production tags.
Right, yeah, that was a bit of a giveaway for quite a few
Andrew's
of the players.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, maybe there's something here. I didn't continue spectating too closely. I did watch 2021, and I don't think I really watched 22 at all. And I watched 23 and 24. From my season, I pretty much got exactly what I expected. I wasn't too thrilled about it, but I knew that Royals would probably be brought back. I know Patrick loves him. I know Lily and EJ are great as well, so I knew that they would probably be making an appearance. But honestly, and obviously I think we're all a little biased when we play, but I think my cast was so great in Stone Age that anybody from Merge, except for maybe one person who was relatively inactive most of the time, even with their original tribe members, I think anybody could have come that had made the Merge. It was really just a good second half of the game as far as personality and gameplay was concerned. And then when it got into the more recent seasons, I there are people that I really knew because they just stood out as a spectator, even if I wasn't following closely. People
Mm.
like Shaylin, EJ. Um, Clara was a winner and she was very well liked, player of the season. Those were people that I pretty much knew would be coming. Um, and yeah, so I wasn't too surprised to see who was on the cast.
Yeah, well, you do end up seeing and even starting with one of those players. But yeah, just to give us a bit of a recap for maybe those who weren't as um, aware of your original season, how would you say like the general kind of gist of how your original season went for you?
So I got kind of lucky in a sense that I was put onto a cast with people who were, we kind of ran the extreme as far as ages were concerned. And I just so happened to be on the tribe with more of the older folks. We even had an alliance called the AARP Alliance. So that was like something that we kind of bonded over. And when I say older, in the world of orgs, older is like 25, 26 years old. It's
Right.
not like, these people are in their, mid 30s like I am. And one of our uh, guys was in his 50s or is in his 50s now. He wasn't when we first started. Yeah, so that helped me make some bonds early on, I think. And we lucked into um, being the tribe that was winning. So we didn't really have to go to tribal council too much. It was great because I didn't have to participate in the challenges in the tribal phase like at all. We were like, I think we lost one pre-swap pre-swap challenge, and that vote was a little tough, but we did end up getting through that. And I kind of lucked myself into a position where um, I was the figurehead, I think, and I was kind of seen as running things. And I think a lot of people thought that I thought I was running things when I knew that wasn't really the case. I was just kind of the most verbal, I was the most vocal, the loudest guy, and people just were paying more attention to me. There was, right after merge, there was kind of this rivalry between myself and the um, I guess, other figurehead on the other side, Vince, who he and I played up this little bit of a, good versus evil type thing. And that's where the name Stanos came from,
I
was
see.
me. What?
I see. It's good to know that sort of lore in a sense.
Yeah, so like I was starting to play up my villainous side about halfway through the game when this rivalry kind of reared its head. And it was, just for fun. We have played together since. Vince and I are pretty cool. I've played his org. I've played others with him. He's a great guy. He's just like me. He likes to put himself into it. He doesn't take himself too seriously, regardless of what other people might think. He was just a really fun guy. And then, it just was kind of his alliance versus my alliance. And then we had I think we were in the merge, we had a 6-5 lead. Um, and it went to 6-3, I believe. And then it swung the other way. And eventually, myself and my two closest allies at the time were blindsided by none other than Royals, who ended up winning the season.
Uh-huh.
And, I was in a position where I was thinking this was my first org, and I was thinking more with my emotions, and I was letting my emotions get into the decision making in the game, and that's never good. You can definitely have them inform you to an extent, but it is definitely not good to ever let your emotions take the wheel. He blindsided my closest ally, and I knew about it. So that's like kind of the worst part is that I basically unsuccessfully tried to turn the blind side on him and didn't have the sway across tribal lines that I quite thought I did. And he was successful. Then he did it again with the next vote immediately after. That brings us to final seven. And at that point, I was in a position where if I had shut up and just went along with it, I probably could have at least made it to final four. But wasn't really interested in that. I was betrayed twice in a row by somebody that I trusted, and I thought, fuck it. Like, I'm going to go and attack him publicly, and
Gotcha.
just kind of had this huge flame out around that time. So, I was working it though. I was definitely trying my best to do everything that I could at that time, but I knew I was going home. I knew there wasn't anything I could do about it.
Well, yeah, I suppose, as you say, it was your first org. There's like a lot of things to be learned, and it sounds like quite the different experience in a way from this season. And you saying like not barely having going to tribal, uh, and yeah, just being a bit of the figurehead who is driving things too much. So, do you feel like that informed how you kind of played this season? Like, did you try and do things differently, pretty much off of
Yeah,
that?
totally. I was definitely interested in, and this is, I've played other orgs since Stone Age, and something that I've been trying to work on is specifically keeping my emotions in check and keeping them out of my decision making. In real life, I'm just a relatively passionate person,
Hmm.
and I can have a heated debate with my mother in which she ends up crying, and all we're arguing about is whether Tuesday or Wednesday is the better day of the week. Like,
Right.
I just put myself into it, and it's never meant to, hurt anyone or anything like that. I just am, I have opinions, like everybody does, and I'm just down for a debate at any moment. All I care about is, you know, just I don't know. It comes off as argumentative and definitely comes off as contentious at times. But I promise that's not who I am. I'm just. What's the point of even talking if you're not going to have, an opinion or, what are you just going to say? Oh, I disagree, and then the other person says, no, well, I disagree, and then you're like, okay, well, that's that. I guess there's nothing to talk about. I don't really find that very interesting or fun.
Sure. Well, that's kind of
So,
great to hear in terms of someone to get on a podcast. We like that you're willing to share your opinions in that respect. So, thank you for
yeah,
that.
totally. I mean, I know the difference between um, what I should say and what I am gonna say. Like, I don't. If I have to lie to somebody to totally. All right. So the way I was brought up, and I don't know if this is what this is. If this is like a middle-aged white guy thing, I don't know. I'm the type of person that you're nice to strangers and you're allowed to be a complete dickhead to your friends and family. Like, that's just how it goes.
Right. Okay.
Like, that's the reason why you have friends and family is that you can be mean to them. Um, so part of that is just knowing that I'm not going to not be friends with them. I'm not going to stop, disown my family because they disagree about something. I'm just, you know, talking. I might not even agree with what I'm saying, but if too many people have the same opinion, I don't like that. So I'm just like, okay, well, somebody's got to be the other guy, and maybe it's a little contrarian for me to do that, but like, I could argue against a point that I secretly believe in just for the fun of the argument, just for the fun of debate.
Gotcha.
Um, so that is definitely something that I tried to tone down over this season. Was I didn't want my emotions getting the better of me. So I tried to think of everything through a logical game lens instead of oh, this is something that is affecting me personally, because I definitely think that that happens sometimes. I think that we are playing these games and we put ourselves into it, and sometimes we get wrapped up in it, and we know everybody says, "Oh, it's just a game," but I do think that sometimes we take things a little too personally, and um, I just really tried to avoid that this time. So if somebody was lying to me about something, and somebody I felt betrayed by somebody, I wasn't going to say, "Oh, you're dead to me. That's it. We're not working together. I'm coming after you. We're done." If it made sense to do that, then I would. But if it didn't make logical sense, if I could still work with somebody and still, have somebody down the line, I'm not going to just, draw a line in the sand and declare war on somebody because they didn't agree with me at one point.
Yeah, I mean, we see in orgs things can flip very easily, so not burning bridges is a good way to be, to kind of, yeah, just leave those doors open. So thank you for that. That's all kind of even before we've really even like marooned. So I think we're doing well for content. So I don't have to worry about the short answers from you. So ultimately, you do get put on the MGM Tribe with your fellow season 19 alum Jaden. Also alongside you is season 22's Sarah and Justin M. Season 24's DeLuca and Gabe, and then it was Peter and Caleb from 18. So yeah, that was you guys of one of the three tribes. How did you find that sort of tribe as a whole? Obviously you guys unfortunately are the ones to go to, of the three other tribes, the one to go to tribal the most. So tell me a bit about this portion of the game pre-first swap.
Well, I so coming in, I already knew of DeLuca. I had spectated DeLuca and obviously Gabe. I didn't remember Sarah necessarily. Um, I had spectated Pete and Caleb, and obviously I have game history with Jaden. I did not know Justin. I just didn't watch his season well enough to really remember everything that was going on there. Um, but I remember I when I first saw the tribe, I was like, all right, bet. Like this is pretty much best case scenario for me. I knew EJ was never going to work with me. Well, Jaden, sorry. I knew Jaden was never going to work with me, despite whether I thought I would want to or not. So I made sure that I just kept up my friendliness and kept it cordial just in case he might have come around. But I knew that it wasn't going to happen. But I did know from my past interactions with Pete and Caleb that that was definitely something the three of us could work on. Um, Pete and I have never actually played together, but we have played the same series before multiple times. So like I played PatORG the season after he did. He played Holodorgs the season after I did. I was momentarily cast in an org that he hosts, Gamble Viver. I did eventually have to back out for another obligation, but so I knew him, I knew of him, and I knew that I felt he and I were kind of similar uh, just in general. Like we had a lot in common in our lives, but also in the way that we view the game and the way that we play our games. Again, despite what anybody else might think, the two of us are more alike than not. Um, and Caleb is somebody, again, I've been hosted by Caleb before, so I did have a little bit of a connection with him. And obviously, I spec'd him in Prison Break. So those were the two connections I knew I could probably work on immediately, despite not really ever having one-on-ones with them. I just knew that the familiarity was something that would draw people together because as much as we want to try to cut back on pre-game relationships, it's going to happen. You're just going to be drawn to people that you're familiar with.
Absolutely.
And then DeLuca and I had a lot to bond over with both being new parents and all of that. And I was a big fan of hers in season 24. So that was pretty much a no-brainer as well. And then that was kind of the way I approached the original tribe. That was the four people I wanted to try my best to um, work with. And then once I started talking to people and everything like that, it did kind of morph a little bit. And I found myself really drawn to obviously DeLuca and Pete, but Sarah and Gabe were really two people that I felt a lot better with than the others, especially knowing that Caleb would probably be the first boot if we lost, which of course we did. And unfortunately, Pete and I did talk about trying to keep him around, but it did not. It just didn't make sense to have to push too hard when there were people that were, being more active, and that's always the first place people go, right? When you're in an org, if there's somebody who's not being as active as the others, that's like target number one always. So we weren't stupid enough to try to push too hard and kind of reveal that we had more of a connection than we were letting on. So, that's just the way it went.
Right, yeah, so you do end up losing that first challenge, which unfortunately would be a bit of a trend throughout the game in a sense. One challenge you guys didn't lose, though, was the scavenger hunt, which I believe was just the next round, so things weren't looking completely crazy yet. There was one moment where you, I think, posted several images of, like, cups of water.
3 cups of water.
Yeah.
Handwritten Celine Dion lyrics that had already been posted.
Yeah, so
yes.
I was asked to ask about this. What was that like for you?
Okay, so Jesus Christ. All right, so in Stone Age, and this is just for context, it's not really for the challenge in itself because it was a different scavenger hunt. But our scavenger hunt in Stone Age was our very first tribal challenge. And I contributed 2 things the entire time. My team won by double the other team's score, and I didn't post my first thing for the scavenger hunt until we had already won. So I didn't contribute to the win at all. And I don't like to contribute in the tribal phase. I just don't. I've never had my challenge performance be an issue in an org. I've played at least 10, maybe 15. Never once have I received a vote for poor performance or voted for someone else because of a poor challenge performance. So the fact that this became such a big deal was just mind-blowing to me. But this was kind of a thing that I wanted to exploit because I knew I wasn't going to care about the challenges. I don't play orgs to do tic-tac-toe and slide puzzles. That's not why I play orgs. I play orgs for the social political maneuvering. That's the game for me. And as we saw through the season, I think that's the part that I'm good at. So yeah, the cups of water thing, I don't know why I wasn't being accepted. I just kept submitting it because nobody else did, as far as I knew. I was at work when this was going on, and I know everybody had agreed on the time of 6 p.m. Unfortunately, I was going to be driving for an hour, so I wasn't going to be able to contribute anything. So I was at work, and I thought, hey, as long as I'm at work, there's at least an opportunity for me to possibly submit things if I find them around my job. And you never know what's going to be on these scavenger hunt lists. So I wasn't expecting to not be able to find anything. So, my bad, whatever, I fucked up, but I wasn't really planning on being super active and, in the challenge anyway. So whatever,
Sure, well, I guess it was a bit of a taster of what was to come in a sense, in that regard. So
definitely.
you mentioned also the 4 that you ultimately do end up aligning with in the United Artists Alliance. So you felt good with Sarah, Gabe, DeLuca, and Peter. Were you aware that you and DeLuca at that point were being viewed as a bit of a pair?
Definitely not. I was more concerned about being viewed as a pair with Pete because Pete and I were both from an old school season, or I mean, quote unquote old school. You know, we
Right.
both played over a year ago. Um, I was more worried about us being similar, viewed similarly. I did not for 1 second think that the parental connection between DeLuca and I was really going to be as much of a focus as it ended up being. Um, but I was very close with DeLuca at the beginning of the game, so it doesn't surprise me that people might have caught on to that. But um, I was not expecting that at all. No,
Yeah, because I think there was a point where literally all the other three members out of four, besides DeLuca, were higher in your trust rankings. Aside from DeLuca, yeah, were higher up. So I think she might have had you number one at that point, because she was going around referring to you as like Stan to people. So I think people thought, oh, there's a nickname there. Obviously, you had the parents thing. So then within the United artists, you had Compass, which was the remaining three of Peter,
sure, the
Gabe,
GPS.
Sarah. Yes, exactly. So that's how that name came about. Um, so I think there was actually a point where even DeLuca was being potentially going to be targeted in that first tribe. But did you ever like catch any wind of that throughout the game, that that was something that could have happened?
Never. Nope. I That wasn't even a blip on my radar. Going with the GPS and compass theme. No, I didn't. I didn't think of it because traditionally early on in orgs, that first vote, you don't usually do stuff like that quickly. I
Sure.
thought DeLuca was doing well in the tribe. I thought I was doing well in the tribe. Come to find out, that was not the case. But no, I thought, hey, like we're in an alliance, like, and this again comes to my game logic point that I made earlier. Like, I just felt like it made the most logical sense to go the way that we did. That was the group of five that I had hoped would come together after the first day before we lost the tribe, before we lost the challenge. And I was like, all right, great. Now we're officially in a group together. Like, let's hammer this out and, go forward. And if we have to go to tribal at five, then we'll figure it out from there. But I did not ever once think that DeLuca or myself would be in trouble for the first tribal council ever.
So I don't think it was quite I think the first one it was relatively. I think her name was out there, which was when like even things like the idol talk kind of happened, which I think was another reason maybe you had her lower down than the other members of United Artists, just because I don't think she directly came to you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. All right. So the twist in my original season, Stone Age, was back to basics.
Hmm.
So there were no hidden idols, there were no advantages, and I traditionally don't really care about those things. I'm not interested in, you know, putting a target on my back. I know that it can be helpful for lots of different reasons, not just saving yourself from the vote, but also gaining trust or losing it from people. And what happened with our tribe was there was a group that obviously knew everything about that already. And I was just like, oh, wow, I thought I've been putting some decent FaceTime in with these people. I thought I've been getting to know them pretty well. I thought somebody would have maybe mentioned it to me. And the fact that nobody mentioned it to me, and specifically DeLuca was somebody who I trusted the most, and everybody else knew that she was looking for the idol. And I'm like, fuck, like, okay, so I'm being left out of something here. That's where that came from. I know that now post game, it was stupid of me to assume that there wasn't an idol. And I didn't think that there was nothing. I thought that idols were probably going to be a thing. Just the fact that someone I considered a close ally didn't even, mention that she was looking for one when everybody else already knew about it, kind of, just put me off a little bit. And that definitely dropped her in my trust rankings initially, just because I felt like I would have probably told her. You know what I mean?
Sure, and I suppose if you do feel a level of closeness to someone and you find out that everyone else knows something that you don't, that's probably not a nice feeling. So understandable there. So you guys on MGM do end up losing Caleb, Justin M, and Jaden, which then brings us to, I want to say new Paramount, Paramount 2.0.
I was on New Paramount, yes.
Yes. So this was a bit of a sort of start of a new alliance for you in the Seats Alliance. And yeah, do you want to talk to me about Paramount 2.0 sort of phase for you? Was a bit of, I think you mentioned Daniel as one of the more flashy moves in your final Tribal Council performances. So this is kind of where it all started in a sense.
Yeah, this swap was definitely a turning point for me in the game. At least I thought it was. This is the way I viewed it. When I came in, I felt really good about my position actually because I was with Sarah and Gabe, who I assumed were going to continue wanting to work with me. I had a bit of interaction again with Andrew, just in other servers. Again, never one-on-one. We're not friends. I just knew of him, and I knew that familiarity was going to be something that I could use. And then when I started my rounds and started talking to everybody, I immediately identified EJ and Nelson as people that I could work with, and even Daniel. And I felt good. I was like, oh, okay, these are a bunch of people that I could work with, and we're set up. We're going to be in a good spot here. And come to find out, I didn't know anything about the connections that anybody had going into this tribe. I knew that Talia and Gabe were close, and that was about it. I did not know how close Daniel and Jess were, and apparently Clara as well. So the three of them being kind of a trio, I guess. I don't, know if that's how they viewed themselves, but that knowledge was new to me. And especially when Daniel comes up to me actually, this is after the swap, before the challenges actually announced. Daniel came to me and said that he felt good with working with myself and EJ. And so the three of us, had we didn't have an alliance chat or anything, but we had this spoken, okay, we're going to watch out for each other and we're going to work together. And I went to EJ and talked about the same thing. And he was like, all right, awesome. This is cool. The three of us can, get things together. And I made a really good connection with Nelson. I made a really good connection with EJ. And I felt, okay, great. This is we're set up here. And I know I already said that, but then immediately after the challenge, which I don't remember what challenge it was. It was one that I didn't do well in and we sucked at and we lost, as is the case for me in tribal challenges. And as soon as the challenge was over, I start hearing whispers of Daniel wanting to go after EJ for his relative inactivity. He was relatively inactive that day because I believe he was traveling. He was in Memphis when I met him, so he was flying back home to Chicago that day. And I think Daniel thought he would have an easy vote on his hands since EJ was looked at as being a little less active. But I saw the writing on the walls. I saw that EJ leaves. That's somebody who's willing to work with me, or at least that's what I thought. And if, there's another vote, I mean, they want to go after people who are inactive or who have poor challenge performance. Well, that's me. I'm next. So I knew something had to be done. Little did I know that this plan was actually put into motion before I even thought of it, but I don't think that takes away from my part in it. I think I still did a good amount of work to get the groundwork for this to move forward as well. I understand most people think that it doesn't happen without the extra vote that Sarah got from Andrew, which is definitely partially true. I mean, it is true. But EJ, the biggest fear for us was that EJ was not going to get online in time and that he was going to either self vote or that he was the person who voted super early and might have voted in a way that would work against us. So we wanted to figure out, where did EJ vote? Like, and are we going to actually need this, um, extra vote if it comes down to it?
Right.
So we had Sarah, Gabe, myself, Andrew, and Talia, and that's 5-4. Wait, Sarah, Gabe. Oh, I'm sorry. Andrew was at the whatchamacallit. So it was 4-4 in the way that we saw it. Andrew was at the Hollywood sign. So the way we saw it, it was 4-4. I started hearing my own name as well, and I just went to EJ. I knew he wasn't going to respond right away, and I just laid everything out in a couple of messages back to back. I said, "Hey, buddy, like your name is on the block. Your name is being brought up. My name is being brought up. Like we need to, change the plan." I think the plan originally was to try to get either Jess or Clara. I know I myself wanted to go after Jess, and so did Gabe. And that changed when we found out that there was the proposed 22-23 alliance and all of that kind of stuff. But, I knew that if I wasn't proactive and I just went with the relatively straightforward EJ vote, yay, success. But now I don't have the wiggle room to get past this next vote. So I thought for my own game, it was definitely short-sighted to go after somebody that I could probably work with later down the line, which I did for a little bit.
Yeah, and as it said, like it did form that Seats Alliance. Unfortunately, you guys do pretty much lose every
yeah, we lost all 3 that round, I think.
Yeah. So
4. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because there was one where
Thanks
obviously
to the
you guys
Royals quit.
Absolutely, yeah. So we do see following Daniel's vote out that Royals goes home, and then back to back also Clara and Jess to kind of in a sense finish off that trio, if that's what you saw them as. Which then brings us on to I think Universal at that point. Did you manage to go every single
Universal? New Universal, yeah.
Right, so you managed to go to all the tribes.
I was on all 3.
Yeah, and then at that point, you guys again lose one more just for an even bigger streak, and this was the I think Justin B vote out. So, is there anything you want to mention as far as your time on New Universal?
So I did not. So once I got there, I was really glad to meet back up with Pete. I was with the whole Seats Alliance, aside from Sarah. So EJ, Andrew, Talia, and myself, which was nice. I trusted EJ the most at that time, and I hoped and believed that he wasn't going to be interested in meeting back up with Steve and Shay. I know it's something that everybody's probably talked about them being a trio or whatever it was, but I knew that he was probably going to go that way, at least for face value, even if he didn't actually end up working with them. At least check in. You got to. You can't play a season with somebody and not check in and not at least address the fact that, hey, people, especially on an all-star season, people are just going to assume that if you guys played together as closely as some of them did, that you're going to be at least willing to work together. Yeah. Any connection that you have gets exploited in these games. And it was exacerbated for me by the fact that literally every single person came up to me, Justin, Pete, even Andrew, they all came up to me and said, hey, like Shay and Steven and EJ all played together. Shay and Steve are specifically close. EJ even came up to me and told me that as well. So I was like, oh, okay. And with that information, I just assumed, hey, like people are probably going to want to get one of them out then. So this is perfect. Again, I thought, hey, we've got a pretty obvious pair, at least what what everyone else seems to think is an obvious pair. And then there was the infamous Snapchat debacle right before the swap that Pete had told me about. And, I just assumed that would be the way we were going. And so then we lose the challenge. Pete heads over to the Hollywood sign, and that's literally the worst case scenario for me. I had a really good relationship, or I was building a really good relationship with Justin, specifically because I knew that Pete had told me, once we met back up, Pete was like, okay, Justin's my guy. Let's the three of us try to get together with possibly Andrew. Maybe we can pull somebody else in. And that's what I had attempted to try to do. And of course, then once it comes down to the vote, it's like, oh, well, Justin B is an obvious, on the outs. And to me, it wasn't so obvious that he was on the outs because I didn't know anything about his previous tribes. I was just meeting him for the first time. And apparently there was a lot of like hullabaloo with him, I guess, throwing everybody under the bus, which, if you're on the bottom of your tribe, you're going to try whatever you have to make it stick. Of course, he was on a tribe that never went to tribal council, so that can be seen as a little bit of overplaying, I guess. Definitely. So not the outcome that I wanted, especially when I went to Andrew about it, and I was like, hey, like, personally, if everybody is worried about Shay and Steven, maybe the goal here is to break up one of them before merge. To me, I was approaching that relationship specifically as one that very similar to Talia and Gabe, I was not going to be closer to either of them than the other.
Right.
Even if I was able to work with them for a little bit, which I did work with all four of those people, maybe not Shay, but at least Steven, Talia, and Gabe, I worked with all three of them at certain points in the game. Even if I was working with them, they would never trust me the same way they trusted each other. And that was the point behind that, was just to put myself further up, closer to people so that I could have a better working relationship with people. That's all. That's not really a personal attack against anyone. That's just basic playing the game. So when I put that out there to Andrew and EJ, EJ specifically kind of walked himself back when we first got to new Universal. I fucking hate it. When we got to Universal
3.0, why not?
Yeah, 3.0. When we got there, one of the first things he said to me, EJ, was, hey, like, we got to keep an eye on Steven and Shay. They're close from our season. And then once the vote rolled around, I just checked back in with him, like, hey, like, what are we thinking here? Are we still thinking that Shay and Steve are the, target here? And he walked it back, and he kind of felt like he was protecting them to me. So immediately, an alarm goes off, like, like EJ is either, sus of me or, there's something going on here. So I was just like, okay, that's fine. I didn't push back on it. I knew that without Peter, I wasn't going to be able to get anything done there. We just did not have the numbers. And Justin B went. It wasn't what I wanted exactly, but it was what had to happen in order to preserve myself. And then, of course, thinking that I was closer with Andrew and EJ than I actually was, I thought that I was still set up pretty good for the next two tribals if we had to go, seeing as we had Steve and Shay as a duo that people had already pointed out, that people had already vocalized interest in getting out. I just assumed that would be where we go next. Luckily, we did not go to another tribal council until merge, and we were able to skirt that issue. Of course, then I found out that I probably was one of the next options to go, and that's how the game goes sometimes.
Well, yeah, and as you say, you did actually manage to have your first reprieve in many few rounds to actually not have to go to tribal for a couple. So that does indeed bring us to merge, which kind of circles things back to the targets you had in mind, because we do see the kind of Shay EJ back to back happen here. How did you feel about once you arrived at merge? Like, how well placed did you feel? Like, where did you feel like things were going to go? Were there certain people you were adamant, like, I'm working with you, or I'm not going to work with you, or I'm not going to sit at the end with you? What was your mindset at that point?
I think for me, when you get to emerge, traditionally, especially with multiple swaps like we've had, there were two people in the game at merge that I had not met yet, and those people were Henry and Chris.
Mm.
Lily, I knew from my season. Obviously, I didn't know B either. Obviously, there was an issue that happened there that I don't know much about at all, except for what I've been kind of telephoned about,
Sure.
with diluted information from other people. Lily, I assumed was somebody that I could meet back up with, and after a couple rounds, work back our trust that we had in Stone Age. The two of us worked together until my very bitter end. She was the only person that voted with me at my vote out. We worked together from the second vote all the way on. I'm sorry, the second vote from our tribe, because the first vote she was actually left out of. But after that we reconciled. We actually are from the same county in New
Okay.
Jersey, so that's kind of a weird little connection that we have. And I just assumed that I would be able to kind of get back into a good place with Lily eventually. And I knew that she was a loyal ally to have, and somebody that, if she wanted to work with me, would work with me probably to the end. And then I assumed that everyone that had people that they'd worked with would try to work with them again. So, people that I hadn't seen since the first swap, like DeLuca, people that I was swapped away from, like Gabe, I just kind of assumed that we would get back to where we were eventually, maybe not immediately. So I felt pretty good. I didn't feel very well insulated, just because of the new information that I was on the bottom of pretty much every tribe that I was on. That I didn't realize how lucky I had been getting to even get to merge. So when I got to merge, I just assumed that I was going to work with everybody I had been working with, or at least try to.
Right.
DeLuca and I had a little bit of an awkward reunion. She sniffed it out immediately, that I felt a little weird meeting back up. It wasn't anything personally against her. I just know that we had been apart for so long. We had played so much of the game away from each other at this point that there was going to be that reacquaintance that needed to happen
Right.
for the two of us.
Did any
But
part of
other
that
than
have to
that, I
do
just
with
assumed I
this?
would move forward with Pete and try to use his connections on the other tribe. I would try to work with Gabe and EJ, although I did want to target EJ eventually. So it ended up happening a little earlier than anticipated, but that's just the game moves so quickly once you get to merge that whatever you think you were planning is going to change.
Right, yeah, that's the nature of this game most of the time, unless if you somehow manage to completely, like, godfather it all, then things are not going to always go your way. Though, keeping that in mind, you did have a perfect voting record, if I'm right. I don't think there was anything you were out of the loop of, is that fair to say? Have I got that right?
So yes, yes and no. Actually, I definitely overstated in my final tribal council just how important my perfect voting record was. I did not vote incorrectly at any of the 18 tribal councils that I went to. However, that doesn't mean that I always got what I wanted.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, as you mentioned, the
Um,
Justin B one first and foremost was one that you didn't sound too keen on.
yeah, so Caleb was one that I didn't want to vote with. And then, of course, Justin B was another one. Um, other than that, the only vote that I was truly left out of was the Lily vote where DeLuca's idol was flushed, which supposedly was a last second maneuvering by Talia and Gabe to, flush out the idol. And I was still thinking that this was going to be a Lily plan, as well as I believe the three of us were DeLuca and Peter. The three of us voted for Lily. And had we known we would be deciding, we would have actually voted for Talia. So Gabe did a great job at that
I
vote
see. Okay.
to kind of get us off that. That was what we wanted. We wanted to split up Gabe and Talia, and of course he knew that, and I don't know who told him, but somebody did. And so Gabe and Talia orchestrated this, flipping of the vote onto DeLuca just to, flush the idol, which then caused us to be like, okay, so we're still going for Lily. And then that kind of shot us all in the foot because that was somebody that figured into a lot of our late game plans. So that was definitely another vote that I was on the wrong side of, despite having voted correctly.
Right.
It was not, again, what I wanted to do originally.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, obviously it is quite a sort of interesting journey for you to get to the end where you ultimately do. Is there any other sort of moments that you think of throughout the merge that particularly like stand out for you as sort of bigger moments or things that were, yeah, things that just stand out?
Um, Moments that stand out for me were moments that felt like, despite going the way I had wanted, I'm traditionally a ends justify the means kind of guy. If you get the outcome that you wanted, then that was the correct path to take, however you got there. But a lot of that was not the case in the specifically the mid to late merge area. Things that I specifically think about are the Gabe vote, the vote for Nelson a couple rounds later. Those votes went the way we wanted them to. We wanted to get Gabe out, but we wanted to get Nelson out, but the way that they ended up happening were not quite the way the play was drawn up on the board. So even though it could be looked at as a success on one end, what actually ended up happening kind of shook my faith in a couple of the people that I was with, or that I thought I was with. I wasn't told about Andrew switching his vote at the last minute on the Gabe vote, which again was the correct call. I understand why he did it, and it's great that he did. I was told, that I was left out specifically of that move, and that's fine. I was planning on possibly flipping on a revote anyway, so that was a good call. Again, I voted for Gabe, and I knew Gabe had to leave, but it didn't exactly go the way that I thought it would. And
Sure,
then
yeah.
with the Nelson vote, kind of the same thing, with, of course, Peter trying to mount a counterattack and rally the votes against me, which didn't really make sense to me since, Nelson was already such a big target at that point that there was no way he was going to not have his idol. not have individual immunity, and anybody was going to vote for me. I mean, come on, that just didn't make any sense. The only people that benefited were Nelson and Peter, and that's why they were the only two that voted for me. So, then when that happened, and I found out that Peter was the one, and I kind of knew that Peter was the one that had come up with that. Um, I was like, okay, so I was right. I should have been trying to distance myself from Peter, and I have been. I've been waiting. I kind of felt a little like Shan, of course, when Ricard blindsides her. Of course, I didn't get voted out, but the fact that he tried to take that shot first, and Pete is a very smart player. He would not have taken that shot if he didn't think he had the numbers for it. So I was lucky again that it did not go the way he wanted and went the way that I wanted.
Yeah, well, there you go. And he was one of the people that you ultimately were able to get out, just cut short of Final Tribal, which did bring you to the final three with Talia or Talia, I think as she says, her name is pronounced, and Henry. So at that
Is
point,
it Talia? Like Talia, not Talia?
I thought it was Talia, but I'm not. That's how I've read it. I'm not 100% sure, but that's what I'm currently going with. So if I'm wrong, someone
Okay.
can let me know. I'm sure. Um, so yeah. So how did you feel at the point that you, obviously making Final Tribal was a great feeling. Knowing who you sat next to, what were your thoughts about the game you'd played and how you thought you might get on?
I honestly thought in my head that I had, an argument. I thought that I had a winning game, and I still think that I do. I don't think that I articulated it correctly. I think part of not just doing well in these games, but part of winning these games as well is the ability to have what you believe happened be lined up with what others believed happened.
Sure.
So, it's really important that you articulate yourself in a way that makes sense. And I think that I had an extremely uphill battle because a lot of people did not already had written me off, did not see my game as something that was worthy of rewarding with a win. So to struggle against that, I'm not surprised that Talia won. There is a reason why we tried to go after her multiple times, even before a possible merge scenario. Had I had kicked it around with a couple of people, specifically at EJ's vote when EJ had come to me and said, "Hey, like, who's voting for me? Let's not pretend like we're working together anymore." And I was like, had a pretty candid conversation with him. I was like, "Hey, like, if you can get the votes on Talia, I will. I will definitely try to maneuver that because, that's what I wanted." But also, that was kind of a misdirection to just make sure that he definitely had the target on him if he wasn't able to um, be successful in changing people's minds, that there was no way he wasn't going to go home. I felt good about my game. It was all over the place. That's definitely true. A lot of that, well, a good portion of that was by design. Okay, when you get to the jury, you've played enough of these games, you've gotten on enough of these juries. By the time you get to Final Tribal, every person takes the information that they've gotten throughout the game and they compare notes with the next person and the next person. And then by the time everybody in the jury has actually gotten to the jury, and by the time Final Tribal Council speeches are even written, the decision's mostly made up.
Hmm.
And really, what you are waiting for is not, you're not waiting for your mind to be changed. You're waiting for the person who tells you the story that lines up with what you already believe. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I've gone into tribal council many times as a juror, wanting my mind to be changed, and never once. I'm sorry, it was changed one time, where I was going to vote for someone else, and then a final tribal performance actually did change my mind on who should win. And
Was that on the basis of the person you wanted to vote did worse, or that someone else just did
no,
better?
no, I think it was based on the other person just doing better.
Okay.
Yeah, I have been pretty lucky in my own uh, time as a juror that I haven't had. I mean, maybe on Stone Age, I think Stone Age was a very lopsided final tribal council. Royals was pretty much the winner before anybody even got into the jury, to be honest, which doesn't say much for everybody else since he was inactive for 5 episodes. But yeah, I like I said, I always go into a final tribal council knowing what I think I want to do, and then hoping that my mind can be changed. And it's not that I think the person I want to win originally doesn't deserve it. It's just I want there to be that closeness. I want to be enlightened. It's just like when you meet somebody and you prejudge them, and then you're like, get to know them a little bit, and you're like, oh wow, this person is not the person I thought they were. And it's a similar concept for the way I approach being a juror at Final Tribal. And I was really hoping to buck the opinions that people had of me and kind of, illuminate to people what it was I was doing when everybody thought I wasn't doing anything. And I just didn't do it. I just wasn't able to articulate it correctly. I do think that had I maybe expressed a little more of my messy side working for me, I think I could have probably gotten at least a vote or two. And of course, it doesn't help that my argumentative and combative nature, as some people describe it, kind of led to a point in the final tribal performance that people apparently viewed as being bickering and petty, and that was not what was intended. If Survivor itself is a chess match, I think of Final Tribal as a boxing match. And, you go out there, you swing, you get a good shot on the guy, then he takes a swing at you, gets a good shot, maybe you dodge one, get another good hit in, and you're not going to afterwards be pissed off that the two people punched each other in the face. That's what they're, being asked to do. So I wasn't a huge fan of not being able to defend myself when I was being attacked just as equally as other people. But that's the game. And if I had done a better job of articulating what I thought I was, able to accomplish throughout the season, I probably wouldn't have had to defend myself so much. So, it is what it is. I still was super proud of myself for being able to get to Final Three, regardless of if I ever actually truly had a shot at winning the game or not.
Yeah, and I think you were a great character this season. You had obviously your trademark with the sun emoji. Good morning, everybody. You got to see lots of Max, so that was really fun. You got to obviously use your profile picture and everything, but it was nice to kind of follow along with how he's been getting on. Just the whole challenge performance side of things wasn't your forte, but that was honestly just fun to keep up with, and just how it would go at any time. And I guess you say Final Tribals kind of fits in with how you spoke at the beginning about how you can be a bit of a contrarian and you like to watch a bit of a back and forth. So likening it to a boxing match, I guess, makes sense in that respect.
And it was very clear to me that getting to Final Tribal was viewed as not my doing. It definitely, through the questioning and even the other answers, and even watching in the Spec Lounge, it definitely was clear to me that no one saw me as getting myself to final tribal, but rather being kind of brought there as someone to beat at the end. And, maybe that's on me for not, picking up on that, but I thought that I had played a game that was worth consideration. What do you call it when more or less everything that you want to happen ends up happening? Like you're going to have a bit of confidence thinking that you were the one to make that happen. And, the fact that nobody else agreed with that was, not something that I was prepared for.
Sure. Well, I have to admit, I wasn't super paying as much attention as I would have liked to, but I think even just what you mentioned about how your game could be considered quite messy at times, and if that's maybe more the perception of what you had going, and then you're trying to sell things as being like, I did everything I wanted to do and it all worked out. Again, as you mentioned, if people are trying to sell a story that doesn't match with what their perception is, they're going to think, nah, what is this guy thinking?
Sure.
So I'm not sure if it was an element of that. And just again, maybe, again, I can't speak with too much confidence on what the issue was, but I think, as you said, if you potentially had some, I think what a lot of winners do is just like there's a level of realness that I think, as you say, if the jurors can get on board with what you're saying and think that that's what happened, I think it's harder when someone says like, I did this, I did this, I did this, if they don't believe it,
Sure.
to then vote for them. So again, I can't
I
speak
think
for them, but that's how I may have interpreted it myself.
I think that in my mind, I kind of touched on it a little earlier. I went into the game uh, kind of wanting to play dumb a little bit
Mm,
and be somebody who, like I said, wasn't doing well in challenges, and that was not an act. I am not good at challenges. Of course, I didn't anticipate the amount of, like just how bad I would come to be. As much as I want to take ownership of being bad at the challenges on purpose, um, I did not intend to leave multiple challenges during, the actual participation of it.
sure.
Um, Live challenges are not for me. I never have played a an org with so many live challenges, especially in the tribal portion of it. It was just so overwhelming for me. Traditionally, I have a pretty busy schedule. I know a lot of people do, so that's not an excuse. But when I, say, hey, I'm available from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then everybody wants to do it at 6 p.m., I was like, I said to 6 p.m. I
Right,
can do
yeah.
it before 6 p.m. I can't do it at 6 p.m. So then I was just like, okay, well, I don't want to, you know, be like pushing anything and then have that be an issue for why people want to get rid of me as well. So I just wanted to be, understanding of other people, even if I don't think everybody was truly understanding of my schedule needs as well. But, again, that's part of the game. And I did not expect the challenge thing to be such an issue. Um, Not just on the from the perspective of uh, you know, me doing badly at the challenges, but also I didn't expect not to be able to finish the challenges sometimes. There were things that came up, and, I think it's fitting that it just so happened to be me. But that's that's what happens. Life gets in the way sometimes, and that's really all you can try to do is limit the amount of times that happened, and the fact that I had to leave multiple challenges is not a good look. So I understand that, and that was not intentional. But you know, just being bad at the challenge, when you see the challenges that I did finish, and then you look at in the individual portion for individual immunity, I actually did not come in last most of the time. I only DNF'd once, and yeah, my times were kind of long, but I always aimed for 100%. I thought in the second half of the game I was making it clear that I was trying, but you know, perception is perception, and when you get an early perception of not giving a fuck about challenges like I did, that's going to stick with you. It's going to be a very hard thing to shake.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like once something starts early, and then people can see enough what amount their mind is evidence that it's going to continue to ring true.
It
I
just
think past
becomes
a certain
a
point,
self-fulfilling prophecy that just, people just will keep, every even if it wasn't me, if it was somebody else, it would have been the
right?
same exact thing. And I think it was just easy, to gang up on me, not necessarily gang up, but I think the dog pile on me is, relatively justified because it was me that was having this issue. Nobody else. Maybe there were a couple people that didn't do a challenge once or twice, but it was really just me that was costing his team single-handedly.
We love to get hung
Even
up
though
on
I did,
things at the end of the day as human beings. It's like, oh, that's the person that does this thing, and then we just look for it because you've done it a few
sure,
times, and then it's like, oh, that's Stanley. He's the person who isn't good at challenges, and then you just every time it happens, like, I did it again. Like, do you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, I think as you said, like if you do it early on enough, then it does just become a bit of a thing, and then it just so happened that unfortunately it kind of happened a few more times beyond that.
I When I originally came up with the idea to come in and kind of play up the idea of not being great at challenges, I did not anticipate just how bad I would be at them. I have never tried to actively participate and actively win in a tribal challenge in any org. I have never once, I don't try them. I just don't. It's kind of like back when I was in school. If the homework was interesting, then I would try. Like
Right.
some of these challenges were great. They really were. And in certain challenges, I did want to try a lot harder than I did. But, you know, um, outside factors kind of contributed to me not being able to always participate the way I might have wanted to.
Of course, yeah. And yeah, it's just so hard to coordinate a lot of these things, as you say, especially in the tribal portions, and when there's other stuff going on, and if it's not meeting your like ideal schedule, then these things can happen. It just kind of was a bit of a, I don't know if I'd say a perfect storm, but there were a lot of things like coincided that made things kind of look a certain way, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's just my legacy now.
Yes, exactly, and
I'm totally
you have the branding.
yeah, and you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I did not expect to come out of the game and read confessionals and read Spec Lounge and see the absolute hatred and vitriol for this kind of stuff. Like I was not expecting it at all. I've never been a part of a cast that gave two shits about like, you know, and I guess that's what you get when you're dealing with all stars. You're dealing with winners who, have had, targets on their back because they come into the game as someone who won their season, or you have people who, lost their season by possibly one vote who are, trying to prove themselves. And then you've got me who wants to just kind of coast for a little bit because I was a seventh placer that nobody is going to be looking at because I come into the game with a relatively low target because no one is expecting shit of me because I didn't place well. I mean, I placed poorer than a lot of the other players, and I didn't have any fancy tags next to my name. I wasn't a fan favorite. I wasn't player of the season. I was kind of given the pass to kind of chill out more than I actually did.
Sure. And I want to say, even as someone who did like comment on the fact that you had this sort of legacy, I certainly don't ever never meant it to come across in like a sort of hateful way. For me, I found it funny. I just thought it was like, hey, this person's doing like their like shtick in a sense. So I apologize if it obviously did become hurtful or anything like that. But from my
No,
point of view, it
it's
was just a funny thing that happened, at least for
no,
me.
it's absolutely no apologies are necessary. I you know I thought I was playing well, and outside of the challenges, obviously, I thought that I was doing well. So if I was watching Survivor at home, or even if I had been watching this season, no shit, I would be making fun of me. Like, of course, like, how could you not? Like, I am not bitter at anything. This is what happened. These are the things that happened, and you guys got to watch it in real time. Was I a little hurt? Um, yeah, but not not in a way that makes me, pissed off. I still had fun. I had a lot of fun. And, I just thought that aside from the terrible challenge performance, I was actually doing a little better. Sandra doesn't get shit for being terrible at challenges.
Of
I mean, she
course, yeah.
does, but
No, I know what you mean. Like, but that's the way I saw it. I just thought it was like this kind of like quote unquote iconic thing that was like, oh, that's Stanley like doing Stanley stuff. Like, um,
and it
but
is.
as far as the gameplay, yeah, I don't know. Like, again, I wasn't the best spec this season, funnily enough. But yeah, it's hard to say what people's like rationale was for why they saw things going a certain way. As you said, you did try and I guess play up certain elements to help lower your target level. So maybe then that just kind of maybe not necessarily went overboard, but then you managed to stick that maybe perception more than you'd have liked it to. I don't know. Um,
I think I did too well at what I intended to do.
Right, yeah, that's the thing. Like you definitely achieved the perception you kind of wanted, but it kind of stuck
Yeah,
as opposed to something that you were able to then overcome at the end to say, um, and here's why that's a good thing, rather than, you know,
exactly.
yeah,
I think the flip got switched and then it just kind of broke off and I wasn't able to, you know, switch it back. It definitely was, like I said, at times intentionally, I was playing messy. Not all the time. I'm not going to own every single thing that I did as some masterminded move to appear less of a threat. It was my intention sometimes, but it was not always. And, you know, I was never able to kind of reverse that idea. I think the only person who, believed that I was halfway decent at the game was Peter. And I think I kind of came to terms with it. The way that I know you didn't ask me this question, but I think it's related to why I was perceived the way I was.
of course, go for it.
Um, my close association with Peter, um, I don't know for all of the historians, the Survivor historians, Kim Spradlin. Okay, Kim Spradlin wins. What is it? World One World
One word, yeah,
season 24. She does it in a super dominating way, in a way where it's never really in doubt that she's going to win the game. And from the outside, like all of the men on the other tribes, everybody knows, okay, Kim is the one to watch. Kim is the one obviously running the show. But the way that Kim approached her alliance and her relationship with what are their names? Sabrina
Sabrina,
and what is her
Chelsea.
name?
Is Chelsea one? Have I made that up?
Chelsea? Is that her name? The
Oh my
blonde?
god, I've probably got this wrong. I know people are gonna
I
burn me
think
at
it
the
is
stake.
Chelsea. I don't. Isn't she like a country star or something
I
now?
think so, but I'm the wrong person to ask. Uh,
Anyway,
yeah, let's say for the sake of argument, I can always edit it and post or something. I don't know.
so what Kim was able to do was she was able to put herself in a position where she was seen from the outside as the one taking the lead,
Mm.
but she was giving the other two people in her close alliance the sense of, hey, we're in this together. We're doing this together. And that's definitely what Pete did to me. Everything that I did, well, come merge, pretty much up until the Nelson vote, everything I did with Peter. So as soon as the cycle ended, we would go convene and we'd be like, okay, so what are we thinking here? And then I would say, okay, this is what I think the best move is. He would say, okay, this is what I think the best move is. And then we'll like talk it out a little bit. And then it's like, okay, so how do we do that? Who do we need on board to make this happen? Okay, so we need this person, this person, and this person. How about you go talk to these people? I'll go talk to these people. Then we'll, meet back up and see what we think is, what we can work with. And so I personally thought we were making all of our moves together. But, there is definitely something to be said for someone like Pete, who is just more adept at, playing the social game and getting people to kind of see his perspective on things. So even if somebody had the same conversation with me that they did with Pete, Pete probably did it in a way that made them feel better about it. And, that's why he had to go. I knew I couldn't sit at the end with him because I knew I would lose. But, I wouldn't at least get his vote. So he had to be on the jury because I needed to get one vote,
And that you did. You did get Pete's vote. And I think it says something in a sense when the fallen angel, so to speak, votes for someone. I think that's kind of a nice extra nod, like that, there's some respect there. Because I spoke with Pete as well, and he did speak highly of you, and he did think he was absolutely leaning at you going into Tribal, and he wanted to hopefully be able to have other people see what he saw with the game you'd played. But as you say, sometimes I think we even saw it mentioned some people were kind of fairly decided coming into Tribal, and it's hard to go from one perception to maybe a vastly different perception.
And
just in that space of
I
time.
don't think that's an unreasonable thing. I think that in order for you to be decided going into Tribal Council, there has to be something there. And obviously, if people were decided about Talia going into Tribal, then there was obviously something there that I wasn't seeing. Which, hats off to her. I know that, she's not going to listen to this, so I'm not worried about it. But she did a great job at whatever it was she was able to, do. And people saw that, and that's what you need to be able to win this game. Because it doesn't matter at the end of the day whether I saw what she did or not, because I wasn't voting.
Yeah, true.
So she did what she was supposed to do, and she got the votes she needed. So regardless of what I thought her game was like, doesn't matter.
Yeah, sometimes just the way the cookie crumbles. It's not always. It's hard when our perception doesn't meet the perception of, I guess, the people who are ultimately quote unquote deciding things. Especially if you've been out of the loop for a while. Like obviously they're all in Ponderosa talking, and you're just off in your own sequestered bubble. So I can imagine how hard that is when you think okay, yeah, I'm going to sell my game. Yes, I'm killing Tribal, and then you come to the end and find where are the votes.
And yeah, but that's the game, right? The game is controlling perception, because perception is reality, and that's the trick to being good at this game. And I think I did that to an extent, not to the extent that I had hoped, but I do appreciate the fact that Pete was able to vote for me, just because I felt like it was a testament to all the work that we had done together. I definitely felt like we had a very in sync relationship. He was one of the closest people from the get go, and we literally did everything together. I never did anything without checking in with him, and for the most part, he was the same. I know that he was more social than I was at times, and that's definitely why he was able to get the perception that he did. And it's great the way he played it, because honestly, I wasn't even thinking about cutting him for a really long time. It was probably halfway through merge. I think it was maybe round 8, which is the Gabe vote, was when once Gabe went out, I was like, okay, so Pete is the one that's getting all these accolades for all these moves that we're doing together. So like, all right, I need to reverse that. I need to change this perception. So, he was amazing to play with. I loved just getting to know him in general, and he is somebody I really hope to continue a friendship with outside of the game.
Oh, I'm really glad to hear that because, honestly, Stanley, you were great to watch. I will remember you as definitely one of the main people when I think of this season. So, thank you again so much for everything. Is any other thoughts, anything we've not touched on that you maybe want to still speak about? I appreciate. I've been keeping you for quite a while, so I would appreciate if that's...
Yeah, I apologize for talking your ear off. I did not realize I was going to go so long. I guess I'll just say with one last piece. If anybody is sitting through this almost 2 hour bullshit fest of me, stroking my own ego or whatever it was, I just am super thankful to get the experience that we had together. All of production, all of the players, all of the specs, anybody who was involved whatsoever. I loved every minute of it. And even though she hates me, justice for Sarah, and that's it.
I don't think Sarah hates you, but
she did. She did in the game. She might not anymore. She might have seen my value as a spectator, but
okay. I can't speak to that, so maybe fair enough. I can't speak to that. But honestly, yeah. Thanks so much, Stanley, for doing this with me. I appreciate that you've given me all this time of yours, and congrats on getting to the final tribal. I appreciate probably not quite the thing you wanted, right, getting there at the end, but yeah, you made this an entertaining season. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out to me, and it was fun.
All right, guys. Then I think that's it for today's interview. Thanks so much for anyone who checks this out, and we'll speak to you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.
See ya.